Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Paddy.
And I'm Tricia. This week we join the Doctor and his friends as they face the Ambassadors of Death. We'll be talking about the Doctor, the companions, and the villains, and give your thoughts on the story as a whole.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts on this story, and so to join the discussion, you can check us out at Time Team. That's TIMETEAMP on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. But first, though, I suppose I'd better give you the story recap.
That's what you're here for.
I thought I was here for my sparkling wit and personality.
And that's it.
Yeah. Read the show, monkey. Episode 1. In deep space, a rescue shuttle is approaching the motionless Mars 7 probe, which has been out of contact with Earth for several months. The pilot of the rescue shuttle, Van Leyden, is doubtful that there is anyone left alive on the probe, and the rescue mission coordinator, Professor Cornish, seems to agree. His second-in-command, Dr. Bruno Tatalian, says that this would paint the space program in a negative light as the media are closely following the rescue mission. The Brigadier, who is also on hand to observe the rescue, asks what Cornish will tell the media, but Cornish replies that that is someone else's responsibility. In the TARDIS, the Doctor is watching a news report about the rescue mission, and he gives some background information on the probe itself. It was a manned reconnaissance mission to the surface of Mars, which seemed to go well, but 12 hours after landing, communication with the astronauts ceased. 8 months later, after the worst had been assumed, the probe was detected via long-range scanners. He turns on the television and goes back to tinkering with the TARDIS console. Liz enters and asks him what he is doing, and he tells her that he is trying to repair the time vector generator. He then reactivates it, but sends Liz 15 seconds into the future. He tinkers with it and then disappears himself. Liz then reappears, and the Doctor appears a few seconds after her, whereby he explains what happened. He then notices the Brigadier on television as part of the news report, but he is still harbouring ill feeling towards him after the destruction of the Silurian base. Liz then turns up the TV, and they listen as the news reporter announces that the rescue shuttle is about to link up with the probe. Cornish walks Van Leyden through the linking procedure, and he successfully attaches the shuttle to the probe. Van Leyden then reports that he can hear something from the other side of the hatchway, leading him to believe that the probe crew are alive. However, once he opens the hatch, he recoils as a shrieking sound fills the air and gets piped back through the control center and the TV broadcast, causing anyone that hears it a great deal of pain. The Doctor solemnly announces that he has heard that sound before, but admits to Liz that he can't remember from where, due to the blocks in his memory. He tells Liz that they need to get to the control room as soon as possible. At the control center, Cornish is informed that there are no faults on their end with the communications equipment. The Brigadier asks if they can send another rescue shuttle, but Cornish says that it would take time to organise. Tatalian deals with the media, telling them that everything is fine, but grows frustrated with the questions as he can't give any definitive answers. The Doctor arrives and informs everyone that the sound will happen again as he believes it is a message of some description. He asks Cornish if they took a recording of the sound, but Cornish demands that he leave as he is too busy trying to contact the shuttle. As they argue, the sound appears again, and once it ends, he asks to be given copies of the recording, as well as computer equipment to analyse it. Again, Cornish refuses, but before the Doctor can berate him, the Brigadier pulls him aside and tells him that Cornish is the head of the facility and needs to be handled with more care. The Doctor then tries a softer approach, indicating that his sole desire is to help save the astronauts. Cornish agrees, but the sound reappears again, and the Doctor announces that he now needs access to the worldwide triangulation, as the new sound originated from Earth as a reply to the first two messages. He says that since the first message was repeated, there is a good chance the reply will be as well. As the group from UNIT work on setting up the triangulation points, Tatalian arrives and says it will be at least 10 days before another rescue shuttle will be ready. The sound then appears again, and the triangulation marks points its origin to London. The Brigadier then gets a call from one of his field teams that did the triangulation, telling him that they found the origin point in a nearby abandoned warehouse. In the warehouse, two men are using radio equipment to broadcast the signal. Another man arrives and informs one of the duo, who seems to be in the overall charge, about the arrival of unit troops. The leader tells the man to hold them off and avoid killing anyone if possible. A firefight breaks out between the unit troops and the others, who all appear to have military training. Despite the leader's wishes, there are several casualties on both sides. During the fighting, the man and the Brigadier get into a standoff, which is broken while one of the unit troops tries to sneak up on the man. He manages to escape and has the Brigadier at his mercy before he unexpectedly drops his gun and surrenders himself. The man and his surviving compatriots are then taken away by the unit troops. Meanwhile, the leader orders the radio's self-destruct system to be engaged, and he and the radio operator escape just before the Brigadier and his men enter the room. The radio then explodes, throwing them to the ground. In the control center, the doctor demands that Cornish order Titalian to give him access to the computer equipment as he had previously agreed to. Cornish calls him and then informs the doctor and Liz that they are free to go to the computer labs. After they leave, Cornish is informed of a massive solar flare that will hit the shuttle and probe in less than 24 hours. He relays it to the shuttle and probe but gets no answer. Meanwhile, the doctor and Liz enter the computer lab, where Titalian sneaks up on them and pulls a gun on them. Episode 2. Titalian demands the recording from the doctor, but refuses to tell him why he wants it. The doctor holds it out to him, but then suddenly vanishes into thin air. Titalian begins to search him, but the brigadier arrives, forcing him to take Liz as a hostage to ensure his escape. He throws her to the ground and flees as the brigadier goes after him, leaving the doctor to help to startle Liz off the floor. He then holds out his hand, and the recording appears again, and he informs a shocked Liz, who asks if he sent it into the future, that he simply transmigrated it. They then place the recording in an analog-digital converter, and the brigadier returns and says Titalian got away. The doctor asks him about what he discovered in the warehouse, and informs them about the prisoners he took. The doctor asks to see the leader of the prisoners, but he refuses to answer any questions, even under their good cop, bad cop approach. As they are about to leave, the doctor catches the man out and gets him to reveal himself as a soldier. The brigadier asks if he is a deserter, but the doctor states that he is clearly following orders. The brigadier is then given a message by one of his men, and he tells the doctor to follow him. They go back to the control room, where they find out that the rescue shuttle and the probe have separated, but there is still no communication from anyone in either craft. Cornish and his assistants then rush to prepare the rescue shuttle's return due to its unexpected speed. The doctor says he will go and check on Liz's progress, whilst the brigadier says he will run a background check on the prisoner. Unfortunately, while this is happening, the prisoner has been freed by a mysterious assailant. The doctor is annoyed to discover that the signal seems to be nothing but gibberish, but Liz says it might be a computer error. The technician says that the machine should be fine, but Liz says she will run a standard test on it. However, the doctor says instead to get it to calculate 2 plus 2, and when it returns with an answer of 5, he voices his distaste for computers. However, Liz suggests that Titalian possibly interfered with it. Back in the control room, Cornish oversees the approach of the rescue shuttle, but again there is no response to their communications. However, they manage to take remote control of the shuttle and guide it to land safely. The doctor and the brigadier congratulate Cornish on his success, but he says it will all be for naught if the astronauts are dead. Together they all go to look at the shuttle landing site in the countryside, and again they receive no answers to their communications. The brigadier says they need to get them out, but Cornish says the mechanism appears to be jammed, but the doctor says it actually looks like it has been locked from the inside. He suggests bringing it back to the space center so they can try and safely get into it without risking the lives of the astronauts. The brigadier radios for the roads to the space center to be cleared. Unknown to him, his communications are being listened into by the two men from the radio room in the warehouse. The doctor goes on ahead to the space center whilst the brigadier rides in the shuttle escort. En route to the space center, the escort convoy is attacked by a helicopter that drops smoke bombs, causing the convoy to veer off the road. The helicopter lands and two men exit from it wearing strange gas masks and carrying strange pistol-like weapons connected to their backpacks. They shoot everyone from the convoy, including the brigadier, before hijacking the truck containing the shuttle's life pod. One of the unit soldiers tries to enter the helicopter, but is kicked off as it tries to take off again. As the doctor is driving back to the space center, he intercepts the truck and, sensing something wrong, pulls Bessie into the middle of the road and pretends to have broken down. The truck stops and the driver, who is actually the radio operator from the warehouse, tells him to move. The doctor asks him for help in moving Bessie off the road, and together with the radio operator's superior, they push her off the road. The doctor then activates an anti-theft device that stops the duo from removing their hands from the car, and then takes the truck back to the space center. He arrives back a few hours later to find the brigadier safe, who informs him that his men found Bessie, but the men were no longer there. Liz then calls for the doctor and summons him to the computer lab. She shows him some of her analysis work, and it looks like the signal is an attempt at pictographic communication. He says that an alien intelligence is most likely at play, and they must go inform the brigadier. After they leave, the technician makes a phone call, informing his contact about the duo's progression on the cracking the code. The doctor and the brigadier have gone to meet Sir James Quinlan, the Minister of Technology, and present him with everything that has occurred so far. Quinlan promises to launch an investigation into the strange goings-on, and they leave, albeit a small bit dissatisfied on the part of the doctor. After they have gone, Quinlan opens a side door and tells Titalian to come in. Titalian asks what his plans to do about the unit, and Quinlan tells him that they have a surprise coming. Back at the space center, Liz continues to try reaching the astronauts to no avail, and the brigadier again suggests cutting the shuttle open. Cornish gives his permission, but before they can do anything, Liz gets a response from one of the astronauts. Cornish is relieved to hear Van Lyden's voice, but soon grows alarmed when Van Lyden repeatedly asks for space control to grant permission for re-entry. The Doctor asks a series of random questions, but he only gets the same response, and then he orders the life pod to be cut open. Episode 3. Using thermal lances, Cornish's men cut into the life pod, but when they open it, they find it completely empty. The Doctor discovers a tape recording playing Van Lyden's message and suggests that someone put it there to delay them from opening the capsule. Liz asks why someone would do that, and the Doctor says that clearly someone was trying to buy more time so that the removal of the astronauts would not be noticed. The Brigadier says that the life pod has been under guard the whole time, but the others tell him that they were sent to the control room for a period of time while the security team did a sweep of the area. The Brigadier denies any knowledge of organising the security sweep and says he will go and speak to the guard commander, and the Doctor goes with him. Before they leave, Liz points out that the interior of the life pod was highly radioactive, which means that anyone inside it would surely be dead. At another secret facility, the man from the warehouse, who is revealed to be General Carrington of the regular army, is observing the monitoring of the 3 astronauts. He is told by a scientist that they observed a lethal dose of radiation, but they have resisted any attempt to remove their spacesuits. The scientist says that they must begin medical treatments immediately to try and reduce the radiation, but Carrington instead orders him to increase the radiation input into the room that they are in, as the astronauts have become dependent on it to survive. In Quinlan's office, the Doctor, the Brigadier, and Liz are confronting him with the fact that the regular army seems to be involved with the abduction of the astronauts. Quinlan then calls Carrington into the room and introduces him as the head of the newly created Space Security Department. Liz recognizes him as the pilot from the Mars Probe 6 mission, and he then offers them an apology for his actions and those of his accomplices. He tells them that the signal was a specially coded message from the astronauts of the probe, informing him that they had passed through a previously unknown radiation belt on its way back to Earth. The signal was kept secret as the government didn't want to cause an international panic due to the fact that the radiation is both highly lethal and highly contagious. The Doctor is still dubious of the story and requests to see the astronauts for himself. However, as they are talking, the astronauts are removed from the facility by a trio of men who hold the scientists at gunpoint. The leader of the men takes the astronauts out to the van, whilst the other 2 kill the scientist. They then drive off, and minutes later, the Doctor and the others arrive at the facility. The trio arrive at a quarry where the leader of the trio emerges from the driver's seat wearing radiation gear. He opens the rear door and takes out the body of his 2 dead accomplices, who succumb to the radiation as they guarded the astronauts. He throws their bodies into the quarry where they are buried in rubble. Back at the facility, Liz notices the radiation records and points out to the Doctor that her initial thoughts were correct, as the astronauts have absorbed more than 2 million rads. A survey team is dispatched to the facility to help the investigation, and the Brigadier asks why someone would kidnap the astronauts. Carrington says that they could be used as a biological weapon by a foreign power, and when asked, reveals that the people that knew about the facility were both his and Quinlan's immediate staffs. The Doctor then announces that the astronauts are still in space in the probe, and that whatever is in their spacesuits is not human. Cornish puts in a request to Quinlan to organise another rescue attempt, but he gets opposition from the Minister, and so he threatens to alert the press to his stance. Cornish hangs up on Quinlan, and the Minister asks Harrington, who is also in the room, how they can stop them from sending up another shuttle. At another facility, the man leading the abduction, whose name is Regan, is dealing with a scientist named Lennox who wonders if they should take the astronauts to the hospital due to their high radiation count. He then receives a phone call and gives an update on the abduction and the disposal of his accomplices. A few moments later, one of the astronauts gets up and tries to approach the door, but collapses after it signals to Lennox. Lennox says he needs to examine them to make sure they are okay, but Regan is reluctant to do so until the scientist says he won't get his money if they are dead. Regan goes in to check on the astronaut, but it attacks him and he gets out of the room. It chases Lennox up the stairs to the exit, but it then collapses. Regan recovers and then gets a call from his superiors who tell him to expose the astronauts to more radiation in order to keep them alive. A short while later, a package is delivered to the facility containing pictures of the Doctor and Liz. Lennox says he recognises Liz from his time at Cambridge, and Regan tells him that they are his next targets for elimination. Back at the Space Center, the Doctor is finishing an examination of the life pod, and he says that the radiation is completely gone, and that if Quinlan won't authorise a new shuttle, they can use this one. Liz then receives a message from the Brigadier summoning her to the quarry to take a look at the bodies. The Doctor tells her to go as he wants to stay to prep the shuttle. Not long after she leaves, the Brigadier arrives and he and the Doctor realise that Liz is walking into a trap, and the Brigadier says he will go after her. Meanwhile, Liz notices that she is being followed, and a high-speed chase ensues between her and her pursuer. Unfortunately for Liz, Bessie is not as fast as the modern car chasing them, and she is eventually overtaken. She then exits and runs across a nearby football field and makes her way onto a narrow footbridge crossing a river. Her pursuers manage to catch up to her, and she manages to knock one of them over the safety railing before she herself is pushed over, leaving her to hang precariously. Episode 4. The man that Liz pushed over manages to haul himself back onto the bridge, and together with his colleague, they haul her back to safety. They then send her to the secret facility, where Regan takes her down to the control room, and there she recognizes Lennox. Regan tells defiant Liz that she had better help Lennox, or he'll lock her into the radiation room together with the astronauts. Back at the Space Center, the Brigadier tells the Doctor and the newly arrived Carrington that he has sent out an alert for Liz. Carrington turns their attention to the two bodies that were found in the quarry, producing items found in their pockets such as newspaper cuttings that would suggest they are agents of a foreign power. He uses this to support his theory that the astronauts were kidnapped to be used as a weapon, but again, the Doctor states that whatever is in the spacesuits is not the astronauts. Carrington seems skeptical of this, but the Doctor points out that the scientist at Carrington's facility was attempting to communicate with them via radio impulses as opposed to standard speech. The Doctor then says that he is going to the computer room so he can decode the impulses in an attempt to communicate with the aliens when they recover them. In the computer room, Tatalian and Cornish are preparing the rocket for immediate spaceflight when the Doctor walks in and pretends to have a gun pointed at Tatalian's back. The scientist says he was merely following orders and says he wouldn't have shot him or Liz, which seems to satisfy the Doctor, and he lets him go, showing him the pencil he was actually holding. Cornish asks for an update on Liz, but the Doctor says that she is still missing. Cornish then leaves, and the Doctor just starts to decode the impulses when a call comes through. Tatalian answers and says it's for the Doctor, who is told by the caller that Liz will die if he doesn't stop interfering. After a brief pause, the Doctor says to Tatalian that they need to get back to work. The Doctor discovers that the impulses are instructions to build some sort of device. Tatalian asks about the phone message, and the Doctor says that Liz is only in danger if his actions are reported back to her kidnappers by a spy, and he accuses Tatalian of being one. When Tatalian reiterates that he was working under Carrington's orders, the Doctor says that he meant that Tatalian is working for the real kidnappers, the ones that took the astronauts. Tatalian asks why he hasn't gone to the Brigadier with his suspicions, and he says that he wanted to offer Tatalian a chance to confess of his own volition as opposed to under interrogation by the Brigadier. He then leaves to go begin construction on the device. After he leaves, Tatalian takes a small communication device from a locker. At the other facility, Liz and Lennox are monitoring the astronauts, and they note that the radiation level is lowering again. Lennox tells the man guarding them that they need another canister of radioactive isotopes, and after he leaves, Liz tries to escape, but to no avail. She then confronts Lennox about his part in this, and he says that he sabotaged his career due to financial greed. Feeling remorseful for his part in the current situation, he gives Liz his key to the door and allows her to lock him into the radiation chamber in his protective gear so he can tell the guards that she ambushed him before she escaped. She makes her way to the main road, where she manages to flag down a car and is happy to see Tatalian as the driver. However, her happiness turns to shock when he pulls a gun on her and forces her into the car. He drives her back to the facility, where she is questioned by Regan about her escape. When she doesn't give him any answers, he sends her away and then speaks to Tatalian, who gives him the communicator as well as the sheet of signals to be able to command the aliens. Regan asks for a way to understand them, but Tatalian says he doesn't need to know that. Instead, he should follow his orders and use the aliens to raid specially selected targets. He then berates Regan's call to the Doctor as it made him more suspicious. Regan agrees to deal with the Doctor in return for a favour from Tatalian. He takes him into a separate room, and after they go, Lennox thanks Liz for not giving him away, and she informs him that she intends to try to escape again. In the room, Regan shows Tatalian a suitcase bomb and instructs him on how to use it so they can eliminate the Doctor. In the Brigadier's office, the Doctor voices his suspicions of Tatalian, but says he doesn't have any hard proof. He goes over Carrington and Quinlan's cover story, which he says is preposterous. He tells the Brigadier that he may be able to get proof once he builds the device, but before he goes, he asks for an update on Liz, but the Brigadier says that there is nothing new. The Doctor meets Cornish, who frustratedly tells him that there are no available astronauts for the new mission due to the interference from Quinlan. The Doctor then says that he will be able to pilot the shuttle, informing Cornish that he has more space travel experience than anyone on his staff, albeit not in as primitive a craft as the shuttle. Cornish goes to prepare some simulation tests for the Doctor, and Tatalian arrives, asking the Doctor if he will honour his promise to allow him to go free if he reveals the conspiracy. The Doctor agrees, and Tatalian momentarily contemplates actually revealing the plot to the Doctor, but she eventually decides to activate the bomb. However, it goes off when he tries to arm it. Back at the facility, Liz is using the device to send commands to the aliens, which they seem to obey. She asks Regan about the briefcase he gave the Italian, and he smugly replies that it is a way of getting rid of two birds with one stone. However, only one of the birds was killed, and the Doctor survives with only a few small cuts from flying debris. The Brigadier shows the Doctor the faulty timer on the bomb and says that whoever is behind the conspiracy seemed to think the Italian was a weak link. The Doctor then investigates the Italian's locker and finds one of the communicators, which he says has the same design as the device he is currently trying to build. Meanwhile, in Quinlan's office, Carrington asks the Minister to keep trying to prevent the launch of the shuttle. Quinlan suggests telling the Doctor the truth, but Carrington says that he is too much of a wildcard, and the only way to save Earth is to stop the launch of the rocket. Elsewhere, Regan uses the device to command one of the aliens to attack the Space Center. The alien kills the sentry that tries to stop him, as well as the technicians in the computer room. It searches through Tatalian's locker but to find the other communicator, but finds it missing, and so it leaves the room, killing another guard along the way. Up in the Brigadier's office, the Doctor confirms that the device from Tatalian's locker is a way to communicate with the aliens, and the device that he is building will allow them to communicate back. He then receives a call from Quinlan, who asks if he still intends to pilot the shuttle. When the Doctor confirms his decision, Quinlan invites him to his office so he can tell him the truth about what's going on, so that he can persuade him not to. The Brigadier tells the Doctor that he will go as well. At Quinlan's office, another of the aliens enters and kills Quinlan before blasting open his private safe and searches through it. The Doctor then enters and goes to investigate Quinlan's body, not noticing the alien approaching from behind him. Episode 5. The Brigadier enters just as the alien is about to touch the Doctor, and he shoots it. The Doctor tells him to keep away and tries to call out a warning to one of the Brigadier's men that enters the room, but he is killed by the alien, who then closes the door and fuses the lock. A short while later, Sergeant Benton arrives with more men and tells the Brigadier and the Doctor that the radiation signature of the alien disappears further up the road. The Doctor says that the aliens are being used for some purpose, and when the Brigadier asks if it is for conquest, he replies that that would be a ruse to throw them off the trail. In the facility, Liz says that she intends to try and communicate with the remaining alien, and Lennox tells her to be careful, as her curiosity could land her in trouble. She then questions him about Regan, and he tells her that he is taking orders from an unknown person. Liz then suggests to Lennox that he should try and escape to go for help, but he's reluctant to do so. Regan then returns with the aliens and puts them back into the radiation chamber. They are weakened from their exposure to the outside, and Lennox uses more isotopes to restore its vitality. Liz asks Regan what he had them do and tells them about the raids, but confirms that the Brigadier wasn't hurt. Regan seems to be relishing the power he has by using the aliens, as they are incredibly deadly as well as impervious to small arms fire, with bullets being blocked due to a small force field emanating from them. He then leaves, and Liz again tries to convince Lennox to help, citing his culpability in all the deaths caused by Regan. She tells him that if he goes to UNIT, then the Brigadier can do a deal to keep him safe. Lennox says that his keys have been taken away, but Liz says that he'll have to bluff his way out. Together, they trick the guard into letting him go, using his lack of scientific knowledge to convince him that they need more isotopes to stop the aliens from dying. Back at the Space Center, the Doctor has been given medical clearance to pilot the shuttle, and he quickly brushes off Cornish's confusion at the results from his biology. Carrington then arrives and forbids them from proceeding with the launch, saying that all the deaths and attacks led to the obvious conclusion that a foreign power is helping to facilitate an alien invasion. The Doctor says that this is only another reason to go and investigate the probe, and again he asks Carrington why he is so opposed to the mission. Carrington ignores him and instead suggests attaching a nuclear warhead to the shuttle and remotely piloting it to destroy the probe. Cornish refuses to relent and tells Carrington that if he still wants to stop the mission, he had better do so in the next 2 hours. Carrington storms out and the preparation for the launch continues. The Doctor goes to get ready, and the newly arrived Brigadier gets a call from Benton, telling him that Lennox has arrived and is looking for him. The Brigadier tells him to be placed in one of the cells for the time being in order to keep him safe until he finishes his security checks. Benton takes him to the cell, and he tries to reassure nervous Lennox that he will be perfectly safe in the cell. Meanwhile, Regan returns and demands that Liz tell him where Lennox went, threatening her with a gun to make her talk. Liz tells him that he has gone to the Space Center and Regan won't be able to stop him, but Regan instead calls his superior and informs him of the development. The superior says that he will deal with Lennox, but tells Regan to finish off the Doctor, who has at that moment just been escorted by the Brigadier to the launch site. In the shuttle, the Doctor is anxious to get underway, but Cornish tells him that they can't rush things as the fuel they are using is a highly volatile experimental kind and could blow up the rocket if not loaded carefully. Outside, Regan arrives posing as a maintenance worker and knocks out the guard and one of the technicians at the fuel pumps. He then tampers with the injection regulator as well as the input valve for the experimental fuel. In the holding cell, Lennox is brought food by a soldier who asks for the door to be locked once again. However, when he takes the lid off the food, he discovers an unshielded isotope is on the plate. He goes to press the alarm, but it doesn't work because outside, the soldier has just snipped the wire to it. In the control room, the Brigadier rushes in and tells Cornish to stop the launch as he has just come back from investigating the tampering with the fuel pumps. However, he is too late and the shuttle launches, and Cornish and his crew try to remotely reduce the speed of the shuttle, but to no avail. The Doctor tries to take manual control, but the G-forces are too powerful, and he tells Cornish to prematurely jettison the Stage 1 thrusters, even though there may be a risk that he may not reach orbit and crash. However, the jettisoning works, and the shuttle is able to carry on with the mission. Hours later, the Doctor begins the docking procedure with the probe, but he is informed that an unidentified object is on a collision course with the shuttle, and Cornish tells him to take evasive action. The Doctor looks out of the porthole and sees a ship in the shape of a disc approaching. Episode 6. The Doctor responds that the disc seems to be an enormous spaceship, but he tries to take evasive action, but to no avail, and his communication with the control room is cut off. The Brigadier thinks that they have collided, but Cornish points out that if that was the case, they would be picking up debris on the scanners. In actuality, the shuttle is docked inside the ship, and a voice tells the Doctor that they made him no harm, inviting him to board their ship. The Doctor talks about the fate of the astronauts, and the voice replies that they are safe in a specially created environment. The Doctor exits the shuttle and is guided by the voice to a room containing the astronauts, who are watching a screen, giving them the illusion that they are watching a football match. The Doctor asks them if they know where they are, and Van Leyden says that they are in extended quarantine in the Space Center after he successfully returned to Earth with the others. The Doctor informs them as to the true nature of their confinement, but they don't believe him. Suddenly, the screen activates again, and the astronauts go into a trance before sitting down. The Doctor tries to communicate with them, but one of the aliens appears on the bigger screen and tells them that they will not respond to him. The Doctor demands to know why they were kept prisoner, but the alien, who resembles a shimmering humanoid, demands the return of his ambassadors. This confuses the Doctor, and the alien says that his people feel betrayed as the terms of the agreement have been broken, and if the ambassadors are not returned, then Earth will be destroyed. The Doctor says that no authority on Earth was aware of this, and he offers to return to Earth to find them and send them back. He asks to be allowed to take the astronauts back with him, but the aliens refuse, saying that they will be released when the ambassadors are returned. The alien then says that if the ambassadors are not returned soon, they will attack Earth. The astronauts are then released from their trance, and the Doctor plays along with the illusion, promising to get them out of quarantine as soon as he can. Back in the Space Center, the spaceship is measured as being a half a mile wide, which causes the Brigadier alarm, and Carrington says it must be destroyed. The Brigadier says that the Doctor could be on board, but Carrington says that he's probably dead, and they need to launch an atomic missile strike against the ship immediately. Cornish objects to this, but Carrington ignores him and says that he must go in order to attend a World Security Council meeting about the ship. After he leaves, the Brigadier confides to Cornish that he thinks Carrington knows more than he is letting on, citing his presence on a previous space probe mission. He then says that the only hope they have to stop Carrington's plan is that the Doctor might still be alive. Cornish is then told that NASA are preparing to launch an unmanned probe to investigate the spaceship, which is now emitting radio pulses. The Brigadier returns to it from a security check and informs Cornish of Lennox's death. Cornish berates him over this, as well as all the deaths and kidnappings that have occurred since the probe investigation started. The Brigadier says that they managed to identify the bodies from the quarry as petty criminals and not foreign agents, as Carrington suggested. He also says that the bomb that killed Italian was a new one designed by the Army's weapons development team, and that they have analysed Lennox's body and found trace amounts of a special type of insecticide in the mud on his shoes. He's issued search teams to all areas known to have that insecticide used. Cornish apologizes for his earlier comments, but the Brigadier says he still has no answers as to where Liz and the astronauts are or who's holding them. Suddenly, they get an incoming message from the Doctor, who tells him that he will explain everything when he lands and tells the Brigadier to order his men to go on standby. At the secret facility, Liz is placing another isotope inside the radiation chamber when the aliens try to stop her from leaving. One of them takes off its helmet and reveals a blistered and bubbling face. Liz manages to get out of the room and confronts the recently returned Regan about their identities. He says that he was paid to keep them there, but has decided to use them for his own gain instead. He then invites Liz to join him after he informs her of Lennox's death. He offers Liz the chance to join them or else he'll kill her. Before she can respond, he receives a call from his superior, who informs him about the Doctor's return, and he then informs Liz that he has been ordered to go meet him. Meanwhile, the Doctor has entered Earth's orbit, and the Brigadier says he will go to meet him, but Cornish says that he must first go through decontamination, a process which takes about an hour. Outside the facility, Regan arrives posing as a technician and is given access to the decontamination building. He drives to the outside of the building and begins to tamper with the vents and attaches a gas pipe to one of them that begins to pump gas into the decontamination chamber where the doctor is waiting to be released. The doctor passes out choking from the gas, and Regan enters a short while later wearing a gas mask and takes the doctor away with him. This abduction isn't noticed until Cornish and the Brigadier try to contact him but get no response. The Brigadier goes to investigate and reports back to Cornish instructing him to seal off all the gates in the facility. However, the orders arrive too late as Regan drives away moments before the exits are sealed. Carrington returns but voices his opinion that the doctor faked the kidnapping and is responsible for all the recent events. He uses the doctor's mysterious past and the Brigadier's spotty answers about his connection to UNIT to back up his point. He says he intends to launch a full investigation into the doctor, but the Brigadier points out that he will need to be found first. Cornish then asks about the Security Council meeting, and he says it was a waste of time and that they need to destroy the ship as a moral duty. And after he leaves, Cornish says that he thinks Carrington is slipping into insanity. Back at the facility, Regan lies to his superior about the doctor's death as he watches the doctor and Liz reunite. He tells them about his encounter on the spaceship. Regan then asks the doctor to build a communicator that will allow for two-way communication with the aliens. Knowing they will be killed otherwise, the doctor agrees but says he needs a lot of equipment, and Regan says he will get whatever is needed and then leaves the prisoners to write out their list. Once they are alone, the doctor asks about a potential way out, but Liz says that all the guards have been doubled since her escape. The doctor then says that they will need to find a way to bring the Brigadier to them. Suddenly, Carrington arrives and initially happy Liz is shocked to discover that he is Regan's superior. He then points his gun at the doctor, who does not seem at all surprised to see him, saying it is his moral duty to kill him. Episode 7. Regan returns and Carrington berates him for not killing the doctor as he was instructed to. Regan defends his actions by saying the doctor can build a machine that will allow for proper communication between them and the aliens. Carrington thinks on Regan's statement and then asks the doctor if he would be willing to help. The doctor asks what his plan is, and Carrington says he intends to warn the world about a potential alien invasion, saying his belief that the friendly overture of the aliens were a ruse to have the forces of Earth lower their guard. He confirms that he met them on his mission to Mars, and they killed his co-pilot. The doctor states that he thinks that this was an accident, as they did not know their own lethal nature, but Carrington insists that they must be destroyed. He says that he has been using the ambassadors as pawns in an attempt to create widespread fear towards the rest of their race. The doctor asks about Quinlan's involvement, and he says Quinlan helped because he wanted a recognition for establishing contact with an extraterrestrial race. The doctor plays along and agrees to help Carrington. Carrington then tells Regan to prepare one of the aliens for transport for a special mission. He also instructs Regan to raid a number of isotope depots and demands that he follows his orders this time. Regan then takes the other aliens with him and instructing the doctor to have the communication device finished by the time he gets back. After he leaves, Liz asks the doctor what he intends to do and is surprised when he continues to work on the device. Back in the Space Center, Cornish and the Brigadier are observing the progress of the NASA probe as it makes its way towards the alien spaceship. The Brigadier then receives a call from one of Carrington's men, informing him that they have captured one of the aliens and are bringing him to the Space Center for examination. Meanwhile, Regan arrives at his first target and orders the aliens to kill the guards at the gate and break into the facility. He and his own men then steal isotopes as the aliens are commanded to stop anyone from interfering. Back at the Space Center, Carrington is preparing for a televised broadcast of the removal of the helmet from the alien, hoping it will cause the panic he desires. The Brigadier arrives and informs him of a raid on the isotope depot, and he tells the assembled media that this proves his claims of the aliens' hostile nature are true. The Brigadier says that humans were reported with them, but Carrington replies that they are clearly traitors like the Doctor. The Brigadier rebukes his statement, but Carrington ignores him and continues his preparation for the broadcast. After he leaves, Cornish tries to get the reporter overseeing the broadcast to halt it, highlighting the dangers of Carrington's plan. Back at the facility, the Doctor has finished building the machine and asks Liz to see if there is any reaction from the recently returned aliens. However, this is for show for the guards' benefit, as he has also built a high-tech telegraph that the Doctor is using to send out an SOS message. Every radio in the surrounding area picks it up, as well as the radio at Unit HQ. The operator informs Benton about it, and he orders the operator to triangulate its origin. Regan then enters the room, and the Doctor uses the communication device to speak to the aliens, who demand to know why they have been kept prisoner and used to murder. Regan takes over the communication device and demands that they obey him. Inside the Space Center, the alien spaceship sends another message demanding the return of the ambassadors, or they will attack. Carrington states that he must start his own broadcast to prove his point, but the reporter says that he needs more time to set up the worldwide link that he had earlier requested. The Brigadier tells Carrington about the SOS message and says he thinks it's from the Doctor. Before he leaves to investigate, Carrington accuses him of colluding with the aliens and has him arrested, telling him that all of the unit personnel have also been arrested. Cornish tries to put a call through to the Ministry of Defence, but Carrington tells him that all the phone lines are under his control and nothing can get in or out with his permission. As he is being escorted to his cell, the Brigadier manages to break free from his guards and steals a car in order to get to the unit HQ. He arrives there and asks Benton if they have located the source of the SOS. Benton tells him that they have narrowed it down to an area of land owned by the Army near the Space Centre. The Brigadier orders him to prepare an assault team, but Benton says that they only have a handful of men available as everyone else was stationed at the Space Centre, along with the entire motor pool. Benton says that the only other vehicle available to them is Bessie, and so they make their way to the site of the SOS. After arriving at the site, they get into a firefight with some of Carrington's men, and after dispatching them, they locate the building where the Doctor and Liz are. They break in, and the Brigadier wounds Regan and is asked by an impatient Doctor what took him so long. After assuring both he and Liz are okay, the Brigadier informs them about Carrington's coup at the Space Centre and his own limited forces. Regan suggests using the aliens to gain access, hoping his suggestion will be taken into account when he faces trial. The Doctor's group arrives at the Space Centre, and he instructs the aliens to break open the gate but avoid casualties if possible. Carrington's men open fire, and the Doctor calls out to them that their bullets are useless due to the aliens' force field, and they eventually cease fire. Inside the centre, Cornish tries to stop Carrington from going through with the broadcast, but the General has him arrested. The broadcast begins, but suddenly the hallways are filled with the sound of gunfire as the newly released unit troops engage with the last of Carrington's men as they attempt to stop the aliens. The aliens enter the broadcast room along with the unit troops and the Brigadier, who places the fanatical Carrington under arrest. Left with no other choice, Carrington surrenders, but insists to the Doctor that he was only following his moral duty. The Doctor tells Cornish to contact his spaceship in order to facilitate the exchange of the astronauts for the aliens. He then departs for Unit HQ, leaving Liz to help Cornish communicate with the aliens. He wishes the ambassadors well for their return trip, but hastily rethinks the handshake he started to offer them, settling for a well-wishing nod instead. End of the story. So, as always, after my lovely dulcet tones give the summary, we're going to go over to the trivia corner. The trivia spot. But before that, I actually have my own piece of trivia. As of now, we are just over 1/4 of the way through the amount of episodes of Doctor Who.
Really?
Yes. However, we're like just over 1/5 of the way through in terms of story numbers.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So yeah. We're getting there.
And that's like one of those goalposts that obviously with Doctor Who is going to keep moving.
Well,
will we ever catch up?
Okay. Given the recent developments of the announcement of Jodie's departure, and what was it? It was initially meant to be a 10-episode season, then that was bumped back down to 8. Now I'm hearing that it's going to be 6 with 3 specials. So obviously, and the current events are stopping, like production going at the normal rate. So I have a fair thing that we probably will catch up within the next couple of years. Because obviously, if you think about the fact that nowadays it runs for like 30. It used to run for 13 weeks, and then you had the remaining 9 months of the year off.
Yeah, I suppose.
So, yeah,
that's the point.
Yeah, so we'll get there. Don't worry. And then we have Sarah Jane, and then we have Torchwood, and then we have everything else.
And Class. I've never actually watched Class. Have you?
I did, and you know what? I didn't mind it. I thought it was great. I was actually disappointed that it was cancelled. However, Big Finish being Big Finish, they brought it back. So, over to you now.
Cool. Let's talk Ambassadors of Death. So, the air date for the story was the 21st of March, the 2nd of May, 1970. The writer was David Whittaker. This is the final of 8 stories for David. His previous ones were The Edge of Destruction. Very good. The Rescue. Very good.
Very good.
The Power of the Daleks. Quite good.
Yeah.
The Evil of the Daleks. Very good. The Enemy of the World.
Excellent.
Excellent. And The Wheel in Space.
You missed one there, did you? The Crusade?
I read it. I just didn't say it. It's on the list.
Yes.
I just my
Yeah.
brain skipped it for some reason. Yes, The Crusade. Also
Excellent.
very good. David Whitaker named this his least favorite of the stories he wrote, and that's probably because he actually ended up writing very little of it. Most of it was actually written by Malcolm Hulke, who went uncredited just for contractual reasons.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was like, that was my least favorite. You wrote the least amount of it. That was my least favorite.
Exactly. That is why it's my least favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's always weird for those things. I imagine, like if you're a writer and your name is the one associated with it, but
Like I suppose it's like one of our treasured writers, John Lucarotti,
yeah,
with The Massacre.
yeah. It also reminds me a little bit of I've forgotten their name now. We've met them several times at WarpCon.
Oh, Diane Duane, for yeah, she wrote um, where no where no man has gone before, or where
Yeah,
no the TNG episode,
yeah,
and it was literally one scene in the engine room is all that remained from her original draft. Yet
yeah,
she's the credited writer.
yeah. It's crazy. Although I do
Yeah,
like that episode.
yeah,
I, I,
and
I would be interested in reading Diane's original, but
yeah.
I do like that episode.
And as well, if you ever obviously, for any of our Trek fans that listen, if you ever have a chance to meet Diane, I would highly recommend it. She is wonderfully insane.
She's brilliant. She's absolutely
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
The director of this story is Michael Ferguson. This is the third of 4 stories directed by Michael. His previous stories were The War Machines and The Seeds of Death. We'll see his work again in The Claws of Axos.
Hmm. That's some good directing.
It is. The working titles of the story include The Invaders from Mars, Invaders from Mars, and The Carriers of Death. I like that last one.
Yeah, it's like I feel like that has got a kind of a holdover from last week, with
Yeah.
especially the latter half of the story.
Yeah, but I think it gives away less than this title does.
Yeah,
The Ambassadors
yes,
of Death, you're constantly wondering they're an ambassador of what, whereas the Carriers of Death, I think it gives away a little bit less.
we don't like the ambassadors of death. We prefer the ones that just give out Ferrero Rocher at fancy parties.
So the title sequence for this, I'm curious about your opinion on the title sequence because it's so weird. So it does the opening title, but doesn't do the whole thing. It does like the first bit of it, then it does the cliffhanger like reprise.
Yeah.
Then it goes back to the title sequence again to give the serial name, the writer, and the episode number.
And not only does it come out, but like the Ambassadors of Death just comes in like a James Bond gunshot. It's just like, pow!
Yeah,
Ambassadors of Death. I honestly, like, as kind of cool as the concept was, it did take me out of it because one thing that I really like about the way the Classic Who was done is that the reprise, which is always a cliffhanger, leads into
yeah,
the resolution of that cliffhanger, and then like when you have when you have the reprise cut, and then the resolution happens, it's just like it just takes you out of it like, ever so slightly, I think.
yeah. I hate it. I'm glad they didn't do it all the time because that was shocking. I really didn't like it. So, the production text for the DVD of The Ambassador's Death, apparently Regan and his gang were originally Irish. And there's a suggestion that with the Troubles in Northern Ireland, they changed it. And there was a quote saying, all in all, it might not have been the best moment to show Irish, quote unquote, hoodlums planning to deploy a powerful new weapon.
Yeah, what are we now? When did you say this came out?
1970.
Yeah, not a good time for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because even if they had said they're from, like, Kerry,
I think the only way they would have gotten
there's still the Troubles connotation,
like,
regardless.
unless you get like Miley from Glenroe, like Mick Lally, like in which case it's like yeah. Well, holy God says Miley.
Obviously, then every time he'd come on screen, I think it was nearly time to go to bed.
Yeah, exactly.
So this story was entirely made on, I was going to read this out, 625 line PAL color videotape. However, up until 2011, all the tapes bar episode 1 were lost. So a lot of people may have actually only seen this story like before 2011 in black and white, because it was only the black and white 16mm that had survived.
Mm.
There was work done to recolor it, so a couple of things. It's clearly a recolorization. I think actually what's on BritBox, just because of the way the color sometimes bleeds, is a recolorization.
The copy I had of it was a mix. So I have some episodes in color and some episodes in black and white.
Yeah. So everything on BritBox is in color. Everything on the DVD is in color.
Hmm.
But I think the DVD has the original color, like the original
Yeah.
videotapes. And I think the one on BritBox is the recolorized ones, because there's a lot of color bleed on BritBox. I watched the last episode or two on BritBox, which is easier for me. And there's a lot of color bleed there that you can clearly tell was like recolorization efforts or whatever.
Hmm.
So in the scene where Carrington and the sergeant hijack the truck, right, which I think is possibly one of the most epic scenes we've seen in Doctor Who. You've got the helicopter coming in, they're dropping bombs. It's crazy. It's brilliant.
This story, like the first half of it, is the most action packed thing that they've had. Like it's
Yeah.
like you have gunfight in a warehouse, highway hijacking, high speed pursuit at the end of an episode, and then at the end there's another fucking gunfight, and it's just like Jesus Christ. And but my I don't know whether this is a pet peeve or just something I notice. Like, how many times can that poor bastard fucking unit soldier get shot, get dropped out of a helicopter, get shot again? Every time.
Isn't he the same unit soldier that was like working on the barricade as well? Was that the same guy?
I think it might be, and they're just like going, this guy must be a pseudo Time Lord because he keeps fucking coming back.
Either that, or he's just like very resilient, and like he gets shot, and then he just like shrugs it off, puts on his uniform, and out he goes again.
You can at least put on a bloody mustache on him, to signify that he's someone else, like,
like the robot chicken in Star Wars, where like your man gets choked by Vader and gets redressed.
Yeah, exactly. He comes back as Lieutenant Leopold.
So originally, what was meant to happen in the script was that there was meant to be a number of detour signs and a fake policeman who stops the truck, and then they drive off.
Right.
The idea behind this was to reduce costs, and according to Terrence Dicks, he actually worked very closely with Malcolm Hulke to write something that would be cost effective. Michael Ferguson felt it wasn't exciting enough. Basically persuaded Barry Letts to use the sequence that appears in the finished episode, which resulted in them going over budget, as you can imagine. And afterwards, Terrence Dicks was like, dude, what the hell? Like, I provided you with a more cost-effective method. Why did you turn it into a quote-unquote James Bond spectacular?
Yeah.
And Ferguson said, well, put it this way, you were doing your job, and I was doing mine. Personally, I like the one that we got.
Yeah,
so
like I think it's definitely in keeping with the tone that that we had seen thus far in the story,
And I think with the group that was running it, given the way they were in the warehouse, it's much more in line with their methodology.
Yeah.
Rather than doing a detour and whatever that makes sense. We see the TARDIS console prop in color, not in the TARDIS. So this is the first time we've seen it outside of the TARDIS itself. It's usually obviously contained within the control room. It's the first time we're seeing it in color. It had been in storage since the end of the last season because they didn't use it on the first two stories of this season. So they pulled it out of storage. It was a little bit of wear and tear. They've been using it for 7 years. And the fact that it was going to be in color now,
yeah, they needed
color doesn't really hide anything.
No.
So they replaced a couple of knobs and buttons that had fallen off, but this is the last appearance. Oh no, the last appearance is going to be next week. Before they've decided, it's damaged enough, let's do a redesign. But yeah, so the first time we see the TARDIS console in color, they've basically sort of just taped it back together again and gone, it'll be fine. And then next week, it'll be fine. And then next season, it wasn't fine. Let's change it.
God bless classic Doctor Who.
Yeah. Interesting point. I don't know why this is important, but it was on the TARDIS wiki, so I said I included. This is the second of 2 consecutive stories directed by Michael Ferguson, in which the title contains the words "the" something of death. Like, okay then.
Thank you for choosing Michael Ferguson, D of Death.
Caroline John, who plays Elizabeth Shaw, her husband, or her future husband rather, Jeffrey Beers, he actually played Private Johnson in this. I don't know who Private Johnson is. There's a lot of soldiers in this. He would later appear as the Master in The Keeper of Traken,
Yep.
so we may double back to him at some point. Apparently, David Whittaker actually originally pitched this script for last season. The story was originally developed with the second Doctor, Jamie and Zoe, and it was originally set in the future and didn't include Unit at all. But obviously, when season 6 ended with all of those characters leaving, it was rewritten and revamped to fit this season.
I don't think it would have been as effective.
No, I don't think so either.
No, I think given that this is like okay, this is a very tropey story in terms of like, you know, man's fear of the unknown type thing, and I just think like having it set in the unit dating controversy modern times, it does kind of really play on that, and like this is like, you know, a really kind of golden age for, like, you know, those kind of movies or those kind of TV shows, like, you know, the evil extraterrestrial type thing.
Yeah. So a couple of other changes that were made. The second and third episodes originally featured an army character named Lieutenant Pollard. He was no longer included. And Professor Heldorf was initially a German scientist named Kuhn. Sadly, episode 6 of the story it's believed to be, there might be another one that's cropped up since, the most recent episode of the series to feature no surviving cast members.
Oh.
Which is depressing as well.
Wait, hang on. Episode 6. Right, okay, yeah, because I was going, wait, wasn't Benton in episode 6? But he was called off, he was an off-screen call from what I remember.
Yeah. So on to our cast. So as Cornish, we have Ronald Allen. This is the second and final appearance on Doctor Who for Ronald. We previously discussed him in The Dominators, where he appeared as Rhaego.
That's who he was. I was going, he looks so goddamn familiar.
Yeah. Then as Lennox, we have Cyril Shops. This is, again, the second appearance, this time of 4 for Cyril. We previously saw him in The Tomb of the Cybermen, where he was John Viner, who we didn't discuss because he did nothing.
Viner the Viner.
Yeah. We'll see him again in Planet of the Spiders and The Androids of Tara. His non-Who credits include a lot of different things, including The Importance of Being Earnest, The Pianist, The Adventures of Paddington Bear, the TV series where he played Mr. Gruber, Midsummer Murders, Our Mutual Friend, Eric the Viking, The Young Ones, Private Schultz, Z-Cars, Ding, A Legacy, and The Count of Monte Cristo. Cyril passed away in 2003. Taltalian is played by Robert Corddry. This is Robert's only Doctor Who acting appearance. His non-Who credits, though, include The Dick Emery Show, From a Bird's Eye View, Z-Cars Again, Ding, The Avengers, Double Ding, The Saint, 199 Park Lane, and he's probably best known for playing Detective Inspector Cherry on Dixon of Dock Green.
Which I think we can now assume to be a triple ding.
Yeah, I think triple ding is in order for that. Robert passed away in 1997. General Carrington is played by John Abernethy. This is the second of 4 appearances for John. We previously discussed him in Fury from the Deep, where he played Van Lutyens. We'll see him again in Death to the Daleks and The Power of Krull.
I will say that the animation for Van Lutyens in Fury of the Deep does him no favours.
No, it really doesn't.
Because they gave him like a block Frankenstein head. Just like a perfectly, you know, cubic head.
Yeah, he's a lot better looking as a person than he was as a cartoon.
Yeah.
Lastly, in our discussions today, we have Regan, who's played by William Dysart. Dysart? Dysart. This is the second and final appearance for William. We did previously see him in The Highlanders, where he played Alexander McLaren. His non-Who credits include Shacking Up, Survivors, Edward the King, The War of the Roses, Strange Report, Z-Cars, Dating Again, Ransom for a Pretty Girl, and Emergency Ward 10. William passed away in 2002. Now, there is a character who we have seen before, but who actually receives several lines in this story, which is Sergeant Benton.
Yeah.
Now, Benton has a more prominent role in the story next week,
Yes.
so we will talk about him in the trivia spot next week.
But yeah, like Benton is here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like Benton is one of my favorite supporting characters from the entirety of Doctor Who, both classic and revival. It's just like, yeah, we'll talk more about him next week. But
his actor is also like the most smiley person ever.
Yes, he really is.
In real life, he's just like constantly smiling.
As always, really good trivia spot. So now we're coming on to the second half of the podcast, which is the character discussion. So, as always, we will discuss the Doctor, his companions. We have the prominent character section for those that are featured characters, but neither like outright allies nor outright villains. And then we have the villains section of it.
I just want to comment on one thing. This is the second section of the podcast. Technically speaking, if you take the interstitials, this is the third section of the podcast because I put music between the summary and trivia.
Well, it's like we always say it's like meat and bones, main part. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Second is just technically wrong.
Yeah. Oh, shush. Just for that, I'm going to go first this week when we discuss that.
Off you go.
All right. So last week we had Science Doctor, which we love. This week we have Space Doctor. So again, get your GI Joe, swappable outfits ready. I love the sequence where he's acting out the G forces. It's just always going to be funny to me. It's like if you've ever seen Spaceballs, it's just like we can't stop. We've got to slow down first. So yeah. I love that. I think that this is a great win for the Doctor. Like, this whole story is a great win for the Doctor after the tragedy of the Silurians, because he gets to avert the war between humanity and the ambassadors with minimal casualties. Like, there are casualties, unfortunately, but not compared to the huge scale as there would have been. Or last week, unfortunately, with the viral agent that was used. I love seeing his interactions with the Brig and the Liz.
The Liz.
With the Liz, because she is, with the Brig and Liz. And as well, it's such a small component, but I think it's a phenomenal piece of acting, and it's a great part of his character growth. Is when Carrington hands over his pistol to the Brigadier and he surrenders himself for arrest, and he goes to the Doctor. I had to do it; it was my moral duty, and the Doctor just kind of gives him this. I won't say sympathetic, but this understanding look of, I know. Yeah.
It's more a case of, I know you feel that that's true.
Yeah. And, like, it was, I think that's a phenomenal piece of acting. Like, again, it's just, that's one of the things I love about the three men that we've seen play the Doctor. We've seen William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton, and John Pertwee. Is that they have been able to convey a lot with either one line of dialogue, like a very short line, or even just a look.
Yeah.
And it's great here. And all those kind of components have led to great character growth. And this is, for me, it's no different. But again, there's also the kind of the humorous aspects of stuff, where he goes up with the pencil to Talia and just like, or the handshake, at the very end where he goes to offer the handshake, he just runs the hand through the hair instead of kind of going, well, good luck. I just think this was a really good story for the Doctor, I think.
So I agree with most of what you said. I do have one negative that I'll get to in a second. For me, I think the start of this story, he's clearly still salty over the Silurians.
Oh yeah, very salty.
He even makes a comment like, "Oh, the Brigadier needs to do something now that he's not blowing up Silurians."
Yeah.
Jesus, that's still fine. But I like to see that him and the Brig, certainly by the time he's going up in the recovery vessel, they're kind of back on good terms.
Yeah.
It happens gradually over the course of the story, and when they're in that sort of waiting room and the Brigadier shakes his hand, you're like, okay, they're back to At least back to where they were in uh,
Spearhead.
Spearhead. Yeah. Again, you said we see Space Doctor here. We see him putting his life on the line for others. His insisting to go up in the rescue ship. Him being like, "Look, put in the extra fuel. It doesn't matter. It won't affect me in the same way." He's clearly like very determined that, basically, like you said, he doesn't want to have a Silurians Part 2.
No.
So he's working very hard to avoid that and to make sure that that doesn't happen again. He has, like you said, some very funny moments. However, there's one thing that really got on my goat. And I'm going to say it now, it got on my goat enough to affect my overall scoring. And it didn't just get on my goat for the Doctor, so I will discuss it again in a second. But he gives practically zero shits about Liz when she's captured. Liz gets captured. Oh no, Liz was captured. And that's it. He never mentions it again. We don't see him doing anything to try and find her. There's no like trying to track radiation signatures or anything like that to try and find her or the base. He's purely focused on the thing in orbit, to the detriment of the search for his friend. And even when he gets a phone call saying, "Stop what you're doing or we'll kill her," he immediately continues on with what he was doing. He doesn't report the call to the brig. He doesn't say, "Can you find out where that call came from?" or anything. He seems to give zero shits about her. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Why don't you care?
So, all right. Again, my head would kind of go like, no, and I do agree like that. Like, just like from what you're presented with, it looks like it's uncaring.
Hmm.
And like my head would kind of go like, is this one of those scenarios again where there's something unspoken that's written in the novelization, or are we expected to kind of have this like, okay, the Doctor's whole thing is that like, if he can, like maybe he's thinking if he can find the aliens, he can find Liz, or like is that okay? The Brigadier is on this, and I can trust the Brigadier to find her, allowing me to focus all my sort of stuff. However, and like we do kind of see that argument is slightly reinforced by the fact that he asks the Brigadier, "Is there any updates on Liz and stuff like that?"
He asks her once, or he asks him once, "Is there an update?" And he's not trying to find the aliens on the planet, he's trying to talk to the aliens in space.
Oh, I know, but I was saying if he talks the aliens in space, then he could potentially find that. But no, like it's no at the. This is just again that whole devil's advocate side of things, but there is sometimes where that stuff needs to be set on screen.
Yeah, like
If that's your thought process, okay, we can get on a small bit more with it. Still not great, but we can get behind it a bit more.
at least have someone say like, "Why aren't you trying to look for her?" And he's like, "I am. If I
Yeah.
solve this, it would lead me to her.
Yeah.
If I spend all my time trying to find her and not focusing on this, I probably won't find her myself anyway. And what am I bringing her back to?"
Or
Do you
even
know?
like even maybe like a small bit of argy bargy between him and the Brig was like going, I'm doing my job, why aren't you doing yours and finding Liz type thing.
Yeah. Um. So that kind of bothered me in a way, and he makes a comment at the end that I'm sure a lot of people could see as like redeeming his dynamic with Liz at the end, where um Cornish is saying, "Oh, but I need someone who can talk to the ambassadors." He's like, "Well, you have Liz. Liz has been with them this entire fucking time. She's fine." But even then, he just sort of swans off.
Yeah, that didn't sit right with me. As complimentary as that is towards Liz,
It was more that he didn't want to be there.
yeah,
He wanted to get back to what he was doing.
it felt very. It felt like such a weird climax.
Yeah, it just sort of he just left.
Yeah.
He just left. It ended, and that was it. So, for me, I think the Doctor has a lot of good in this story. I think we see a lot of good from him. I think, particularly if you watch this back to back with Silurians, you can see the character sort of recovering in himself,
Yeah.
and the pride that he had in himself that he prevented this from happening again. But the fact that the only time he's asked about Liz is there any news on your assistant? No. Phone call. Don't do anything or we'll kill your assistant. Oh, they're going to kill her if I keep working. I'm going to keep working. And I'm like, come on, at least have a, like, it he's not even upset. It's not even like he's frustrated. And you're like, that's not the Doctor we're used to seeing.
His logic in relation to the fact of, oh, they won't know that I'm working, they won't know I'm continuing my work unless someone reports back to them. You're placing all your assumptions on Tatalian rather than the fact of there could be other people
Like,
in this
clearly
space.
the base is overrun with
Yeah.
people working
Yeah.
for Carrington.
Hmm.
And granted, he doesn't know it's Carrington at the time, but like, obviously, like, how did they know to ring him in the lab? How did
Yeah.
they know what he was working on?
Hmm.
Tatalian can't have been the only go-between. So I think, yeah, I think he took massive unnecessary risks with Liz.
Well, do you have anything else to say about the Doctor, or shall we move over to the lady in question?
I think we should move over to the lady in question.
First off, big pimpin'.
The big hat, the
the,
boots, the
yeah,
skirt. I think that's her shortest skirt to date.
yeah,
So
the short skirt, the knee-high white platform boots, the fucking pimp fedora, and like the massive furry overcoat. She needed a cane just so she could like backhand someone across the face with it.
or use the Briggs swagger stick or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Which actually kind of goes, seeing as how in my head, given the way that she's been, the way she was able to take care of herself, like, was she getting possibly some private fisticuff lessons from the brig?
Possibly. Or could just be she's a very skilled woman. I mean, she
Yeah.
also speaks French.
Which allows her to knock a fucking guy over a bridge railing.
No, I'm saying that she's talented
Yeah,
in many areas.
Yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough.
Not specifically that her speaking French.
Au revoir, motherfucker.
Although I will say that I do like that sequence where like she's obviously there's the car chase and then she runs away and whatever.
Yeah.
And one thing I find funny, and this is obviously just shooting location problems, is she runs, towards the camera, which is like into this field that leads to this waterway thing.
Yeah.
Behind that there's a row of houses.
Yeah.
Run into a house and lock the door, call the police.
No, it's the one thing in a chase sequence, all logic is abandoned. No, I was like, what do you think was it? I'm being chased by a murderer. I'm going to run upstairs. No, just stop it. But I think, like, just for me anyway, I think this is another solid performance from Liz.
I think it is, and like, what I like about this performance is it really okay. I would have liked to have seen Liz again, similar to Spearhead. And even similar to last week, I would have liked to see Liz have more scientific breakthroughs by herself, as opposed to her just sciencing and then the Doctor having the breakthrough all the time. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of that, but I get what they're doing. The Doctor's the hero and blah, blah, blah. But she can completely hold her own, which in this story she has to, because those other two fuckers aren't trying to find her.
Yeah.
So she has no choice but to try and find her way out. And like, I love the fact that we see her science it through. I love her interactions with her captors because it's so much of that Liz Shaw sass, which just makes Liz one of my favorite companions because she's just so sassy. Like, when she gets brought back in and the guy is like, oh, but they said, or no, it was when what's his face, when Lennox left. And Regan is like, what do you mean he left? Like, they lied to you or whatever. And like, he throws her over to the guy who let Lennox leave. And he's like, keep an eye on her. And he sort of like holds her. She's like, don't worry, I won't hurt you.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, she's so good. I think it's brilliant. Like, she totally holds her own. Like, she's the one who basically browbeats Lennox into doing something.
But this is a thing that I feel that Liz is kind of, she's sometimes forgotten about.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because, like, if you're going to draw a comparison to someone, there's an awful lot of Barbara in her in this one, because she's the one that kind of gets Lennox to, come on, we're going to escape from here. She's the one that's like, the brains behind like the prisoner party type thing,
Yeah.
And it very much reminded me of Barbara in Dalek Invasion of Earth, when she's dragging Jenny, like the supposed resistance member, along. Now all we're missing here is a big fucking truck. But
she had the roadster.
She did.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, Caroline John was given a great character, and she was given a great character, but then she helped make the character even greater, in my opinion.
In my opinion, Caroline John was given an interesting character who was
Mm.
very inconsistent. And when we get to our looking back at Liz, which I think we're probably going to do a different format because she only has
Yeah,
4 stories. So we'll probably look at each of the 4 of them and what did we like and not like specifically
yeah.
about Liz and those. Um, her character was very inconsistent. We can see it in no less than the way she dresses from one story to the next. At the beginning, well, yeah, her skirt was short. It was very Cambridge. It was
Mm.
very professional. And she's gotten slightly less professional as the stories have gone on, but she's also acting as professional. It's like it's higgledy piggledy. It's like they don't know what to do with her.
This was the most something for the dads that she's ever dressed as.
Oh yeah, I mean the white boots and that skirt.
Mm-hmm.
I need a picture of that to go on my wall, please, because that was fucking amazing.
Is it going to go up right there, like with the William Russell ass shot from the planet?
Yes, yes, it is. Um, I will say one thing though about Liz in this story. My shipper heart, which I've mentioned now in the past 2 stories with her and the brig, did squee a little bit because when Regan is telling her, oh, your unit friends are dead, like some of your unit friends are dead, her first thought is the brig,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yay, she likes him.
It was like, when it comes to the inconsistent part, all right, there is some inconsistency, but I don't view it as the same level of inconsistency as previously inconsistent characters.
No, I think it's that they had a baseline to work from,
Yeah.
but they didn't know what to do with the baseline. So like her baseline is solid, but they don't know what to do with it. It's sort of my when I say inconsistent, that's what I mean.
No, I think we'll be able to expand on this a bit better in like a week and a bit when we have our rambling episode about her.
Yeah.
Spoilers, everyone. um, so how about we discuss the Brigadier now?
Oh my god, this is, to me at least, this is of the stories that Alistair Gordon and Lethbridge Stewart has been in so far. This is the Brig's best outing as the Brig.
Is he GI Brigadier or is he Brigadier Joe here? Like, because seriously, the
Like
amount.
he leads from the front on the initial attack on
Yeah.
the warehouse. They all have rifles. He just has his revolver, pistol, whatever you
It's
call it.
it's a pistol.
He leads from the front, and like, when he leapt over those crates, I was like, "Yeah, go on!"
What I will say is that for me, that fight scene has 2 kind of real hallmarky things. One is that the unit guys are fucking severely outclassed by the regular army.
Yep.
They get their asses kicked. But also, it's very well choreographed because it's a very chaotic fight scene.
It is, yeah.
Like, there's stuff happening everywhere, and like that's really represented by the fact of there's this one amazing sequence where the brig is in center camera, and he fires in front of the camera, off to the side. There's a guy, 2 guys tackle each other behind him, and there's someone trying to gain vantage by going up a stairwell. And he turns back and he shoots that guy, and then I think someone charges into him. It's very chaotic. It's really well done, but it's just like Nick Courtney was on par with Bond there for me at that point.
Yeah, like
time.
You have that scene where, and that whole like him sort of shooting behind him with barely looking, it sort of reminds me a little bit of either Hawkeye in Avengers,
I was just thinking
or
that.
In The Rise of Skywalker when Ben arrives on the planet and he just sort of runs and just shoots behind him, and like obviously Han Solo did that move as well.
Yeah.
So we've got that right, and that already made this story for the Brig fucking awesome. Then you have the thing where Keegan was futzing with the fuel.
Regan, not Keegan.
Regan. I've been saying, where do I have Keegan written down? Regan in there. Regan has been futzing with the fuel, and the brig comes across one of his guys is hurting his head. He's like, what happened? He's like, oh, he's in the fuel depot. And the brig, completely on his own, knowing this guy is violent, just runs off by himself. It's like, fuck it, I'll go after him myself. Then you have, he gets arrested, and he's like being held by the 2 guys, and he takes them down. You have when they get to where the Doctor and Liz are being held captive.
And he gets into a fist fight with a guy.
He gets into a fist fight with a guy, leading from the front, like leading the charge in Bessie. He's just so This is the military brigadier.
But like, even if we go back to the warehouse, there's a wonderful section where, like himself and like the sergeant,
Oh yeah, that's
yeah,
so good.
they stare each other down, and like they both holster their weapons, and then the sergeant runs away, and he's got the drop on the brig, and you just got that single bead of sweat, like almost like a
Mm,
fucking Sergio Leone spaghetti western close up,
mm,
and there's just no flinching. Like even as that bead of sweat is going down him, like there's no
mm.
flinching, and he's
Andy, you shoot me, my men will shoot you.
yeah,
He
exactly,
was perfectly like, he knew he could shoot me and die. Doesn't matter. My men will take care of him, and I like that trust that he has in his men as well.
yeah, oh,
Do you know, which
big
is
time,
great. And then separate from all that, right? So Action Man Brig or GI Brig or Brigadier Joe, whatever we want to call him,
hmm.
is great. But I do also like in the story is he clearly learned from last week.
That's what I was going to ask. Right? Is that okay? We had a discussion last week over like the Briggs attitude towards what he did,
Mm,
and like no, and there was the question. I was going, was this the Brigadier's decision or was this someone top down telling him
mm,
what to do? But from here, I was going, is he remorseful for what happened? Because he seems to have changed his tune quite a bit. He's a lot more supportive of the Doctor, even more so than the usual "don't fuck with my people" side of things that he usually has.
mm.
But like he's very supportive, and he's just like, is it like he's now trying to kind of get this thing of don't judge the alien book by its cover?
I don't think it's quite that far.
Hmm.
I think because I think in his mind he was quite supportive of the Doctor last week for
Hmm.
a lot of the story. He was riding him hard to bring him some results, but he
Hmm.
was also giving him the time and the leeway to do
Hmm.
that. And while I don't like what he did at the end, in many ways it was a measured response. They unleashed a virus on humanity to try and kill them all off.
Hmm.
Contrast that with this week,
Hmm.
where he has something in orbit, he doesn't know what it is, and he has three missing astronauts who at the time they think have been irradiated on Earth, but then obviously we find out later on. I think his thing here is he sees um, Carrington doing what, you know, Major What's His Face did last week.
Baker.
Baker, do you know? Like Carrington is doing what Baker did, and the brig didn't like it when Baker was doing it either.
Hmm.
Do you know? I think he's very much a person of prove it to me. And Carrington's story has so many holes. It's a freaking colander.
Hmm.
Do you know? And he's like, prove it to me. You're making all of these assumptions. You're saying all these outlandish things. If it's a threat, then yeah, I'm happy to deal with it. But I'm not seeing what you're seeing. So I think that's where he's kind of coming from. It's nice to see him actually play that out and to see him go head to head with Carrington because
Yeah.
I don't think it's that he learned from last week. I think he's continuing what he started but didn't finish last week. So last week, maybe it was the Brigadier's thoughts, maybe it was just the Ministry, but he did cave and perform that
Yeah.
evil act at the end. Um, but I think he's definitely going with I need more information. You haven't proved to me that they're bad. The doctor, I sent the doctor to get me information. He was going to get me information to prove what was happening, and he disappeared. I'm not going to take that one way or t'other. People have been kidnapped from us already. I can't make an assumption that it's the guys in space that did that until I speak to him. So I sort of took it that way.
No, but like, all in all, like I would just say like that this is probably his. I would agree. This is his best performance to date.
Again, though, one of his people
Hmm.
is missing,
Yeah.
and all we really see him do is give her pictures to the police, and that's it. And that is not the man that we've seen up to now. Do you know?
Yeah.
I was expecting more calls of were there any witnesses? Did you speak to the people in the houses by the car? Did you speak to whoever found the roadster? You know, did you look around the area? You know, I was expecting him. I was expecting to see more in a story that's 7 stories long, 7 episodes long. I was expecting to see more of him, maybe working with Benton.
But actually, what's kind of yeah, no, I would have loved more Benton, and obviously we're going to be getting it, as time goes on.
Mm,
But we do get a taste of that whole thing of where it's like, well, there is the doctor's car, sir. Yeah, just like that withering look he gives him.
mm,
Um, but I actually just kind of talking about there because I was going to say, like, okay, none of these questions are asked on screen because, like, is it potentially just like oversight
mm.
or fucking leave it up to the viewer's imagination? But also, kind of like Evil the Daleks, there's a couple of things here that are shown but never really like redressed. It's like, okay, the doctor said that the pod was locked from the inside. How do you take something out, leave something in, and then lock it from the inside again?
Yeah. I, I think there's a lot of things. There are a lot of small things in this
Yeah,
story that sort of go that. I think with the Brig and the Liz thing though, and I did read a fan fiction a number of years ago, which was basically Liz calling him to task and kind of going, "Why didn't you try and find me?" Do you know? Which it was a great fan fiction, and I can't find it, but I did read it a few years ago. It was very good. When Cornish takes him to task, all he says is, "And there's still no sign of Liz." That's all he says.
yeah,
Do you know? And I think in a 7 episode story, they could have done more with that.
yeah. Again, there could have been like a nice little 2 minute section of the doctor and the Brig arguing over, like, venting their frustrations, or like solely for the fact that they can't find Liz.
Yeah. Even if it's just like, have you tried, looking for radiation signatures? They'll just take her underground. We're not going to be able to find her. Like, even if they discussed the ways that they tried to find her and said like, "Oh, I still have some of my best men working on it." Cool. Just mention it. Um, and that was kind of my annoyance here.
Yeah.
Moving on though, we have our companion of the week,
Yep.
our story-based companion of the week, which is Cornish,
Mm-hmm.
the freakishly calm and collected, freakishly tall leader of the Space Control Center.
Yep. And I'm delighted to see that Ronald, who plays Cornish, has learned to look people in the fucking eye when he speaks to them.
Well, in fairness, he's so much taller than
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
else.
Yeah, rude bastard. Um, I I really enjoyed Cornish. Like, I
Mm,
think he's one of my favorite things about this story because he has absolutely no time for bullshit. It's either help him get his astronauts back or just fuck off. Um, but that concern then transfers onto the people helping him trying to find his people.
mm.
Like, he seems more concerned with Liz disappearing than the two boys do, just kind of thinking about it there now, and like as the story goes on, like, he's not like Lawrence from last week, who's a purely objectioning to Eunice's presence there. He
Mm.
actually quite appreciated it there, and then once he saw how the doctor just wanted to help, he really valued his input on stuff.
Yeah, and even like when he looked at his medical file,
Yeah, it's just like, are you going to be okay going up there?
and he's like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah,
But he takes the doctor out because all the doctor wants to do is help. It's clear that Cornish clearly cares for his astronauts, and that is his first and foremost concern. Like the fact that like he goes out into the field to recover Recovery 7 the first time.
yeah,
Do you know? Um, and there is the one point where he's super critical of the brig,
yeah,
kind of going, "Look, I'm doing my job. What the hell are you doing?" And the brig lists off all the things he's doing. Liz gets a tiny mention of we still haven't found her. But I like how once the brig said, we looked at the 2 bodies that we found. They're from this place. They're fucking untraceable. We looked at this, and that's untraceable. We looked at this, and that's untraceable. Once the brig documented everything that they'd been doing, Cornish, he stepped it back. He conceded. He acknowledged all the work that he was doing. He didn't become the the rambling leader of the facility that we've seen in so many other Doctor Who
yeah,
stories.
like Clint or the guy from Fury from the Deep.
Yeah.
Um, also, like, I want to make the distinction as well is that, like, it's the astronauts,
Yeah.
because like the brigadier asks him about, oh, what would people say about the space program? He goes like, that's not my concern. That's someone else's responsibility to say
Mm.
that. And even when the Italian says like, oh, like this could be a black mark on the space program, he's like, I don't fucking care. I want to get our people back.
Yeah. The one thing that he does do out of a no, I think it does come from his concern for his astronauts, but I think
Mm.
it is also him seeing the bigger picture. Is I love how he kept trying to talk to that news anchor and talk him out of letting Carrington do his broadcast.
Yeah,
He didn't kick him out of his facility because obviously Carrington would override him anyway.
yeah.
But he's constantly talking to him, going, "Do you know what you're doing? Are you actually going to go through with this?"
But it's like the whole, like, catch more flies with honey than with vinegar mentality.
Yeah,
Because if he tried to swing his weight around, he could get ejected from the space center.
yeah.
Um, no, like Cornish has been like, he's a character that just really impressed me, and it just I know I was just gonna, but like, and that's the thing that I love. I love supporting characters like that that are in a position of authority that aren't assholes.
Mm. I think at the beginning, because Cornish is so calm and collected,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have a concern of, does Cornish know what's going on? Like in
Yeah.
that first episode.
Mm-hmm.
But then as it progresses, you can kind of go, no, that's just the way he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Do you know? He is like, if you sort of imagine it in the context of the show and the context of who he is on the show, like in the show's reality, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be the voice that talks to the astronauts in space, you can't sound panicked,
No.
no matter how panicked you really are. So while he looks sometimes calm to the point of boredom, you can tell that's a controlled calm. It's not a natural calm, it's controlled calm. He's making himself come across that way.
And that's why,
Okay.
like, that snap at the brig then is
Yeah.
just, it's like, it's just that, it's all that frustration, it's all that kind of stuff, just allowed in one eruption, and then he's
He
vented.
pulled it
He's
back
now
in
back.
again.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
now back to where he can be most effective. So yeah, no,
I
definitely.
will say, I'm going to make a comment in the overall around the cast, the supporting cast as a whole on this story.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think as a whole they're the strongest.
No.
He is an exception though. I think he was very good. I think the rest of them were kind of okay. Um, but he was very good.
Yeah, like there are certain characters in it that didn't really work for me. I will
Mm,
get into the overall. Like compared to, say, what do we say? Obviously, we use the moon base as a starting point. But then if you go further back, like we'd say the Crusades as well.
yeah.
Um, but like moon base, Seeds of Death, War Games, it's like those were like perfectly performed ensembles.
Web
Eh,
and Invasion.
Web and Invasion, yeah, sorry. Even Enemy of the World, yeah, like
Yep.
all fantastic ensembles the whole way throughout. Here, we're firing like so many other stories. We're just firing half cocked, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so we move on to the prominent characters.
Yeah. So here you gave me the ambassadors themselves, who we never find out what their actual species is. And we have Lennox.
Cool. So I think Lennox is probably the easiest one to discuss first.
Yeah, he for me he's a very mousy character.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, he has moments of bravery, but those are largely forced by Liz.
Yeah,
It still sucks that he died, poor bastard. But he just there's a reason he's a prominent character. He's in the story for a lot of it.
yeah,
He himself does not do a whole lot.
no, but so I agree. Like he's very mousy, but things like the situation that he's in usually leads to two types of characters: complete whack jobs
Mm,
or cowards that betray the companion or the doctor
mm.
in that scenario, you know? And it's like, no. And to be fair, like, yes, Liz does have to kind of twist his arm into doing this, but he at least helps with the planning of it. He doesn't leave it all up to her and then just kind of go, okay, I'll do what you tell me to do.
Oh
He,
yeah, like he is. That's why I say he's brave.
yeah,
You know, he does have his moments of bravery when he leaves the key and says, "They'll find me trapped in the thing,"
yeah,
or like when he does leave to go to see the brigadier or whatever. Um, Would he have done those without her egging him on though? I
Probably not.
don't think so. And that's where the mousy part for me
Yeah.
comes in.
Oh yeah. No. Probably. Yeah. Probably not. And I agree. Like his ending is absolutely horrible, and all credit to. I'm going to take a look at his name now because I want
Cyril?
Cyril. All credit to Cyril. He acted amazingly in that scene.
Yeah,
Like
I completely agree.
just like the pure terror of seeing the isotope, the panic when he heard the button not ringing, and that's a very again, fucking hats off to Michael, because it's a very well directed.
Yeah.
It's the sinister. You only see the hand leaving the plate. You only see
Mm.
the shoulders and like the voice kind of going, "Don't worry, you'll be fine." The hand
And
slipping the wire.
if you
It's
didn't know Benton
you'd
as
assume,
well as you and I know Benton,
yeah,
the voice was very close.
it was, and like it's perfect. Like it's almost John Carpenter esque in terms of using stand-ins that have
Mm.
to completely misdirect you. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, no, like, that sequence like, was fantastic by Cyril, and like in my eyes, like no, I know they're two separate characters. I didn't enjoy his performance as John Viner in
No.
Tomb. It just annoyed the shit out of me. Whereas here, I actually like the character a lot more.
Yeah.
And now we have the ambassadors.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Okay.
And maybe I've missed this in the numerous times I've watched this story.
Mm-hmm.
At the end
Mm-hmm.
of the story, they can contact the space center, appear on screen, and speak. Well, their way of communicating is translated into English. Why didn't they do that from the beginning? Why were they sending just pulses? Like I don't get that. Like they clearly watched Recovery 7. I would imagine they watched Recovery 7 leave Earth. They know where
Mm.
it came from. So that for me was a bit of a sort of head scratcher of why is he on screen? Like even if they just had the beeping, like the noise, and then you had nothing on the screen, but you had the noise and you had the machine the doctor built translating, that would have been fine. But why have him on screen? If they have video communication,
Mm.
why weren't they using it up till now?
Range.
Maybe, but like there'd be no story if they did, but then don't have them do it at the end.
Or maybe it's one of those things where they're just trying to gauge the level of technology. Like, because like, there's that whole thing of the golden disc that was sent up into space,
Yeah,
which like obviously like you can't just leave a fucking 8-track cassette there kind of going with a please flip over to find out more about Earth.
yeah.
So maybe it's just a kind of a determining technology type factor, because
Mm.
obviously in most cases alien civilizations are far more advanced than Earth.
Yeah.
So maybe they were trying to have to kind of go, all right, okay, who's got the Betamax that we can use to talk to these fuckers?
Yeah, but they did have the Mars 7 probe.
Hmm.
They had it. It was
Yeah,
there.
that's true. They could have dry rigged it or retrofitted or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it.
So that was just an observation I had towards the end. For me though, I've kind of broken the ambassadors into two groups. We have the actual ambassadors, the three
Yeah.
on Earth, and then we have those in space. And I have a very differing opinion of those two groups.
Okay, so we'll go for the Earth based ones first.
I am not a fan of the ambassadors on Earth, and there is a reason why.
Okay, go for it.
They kill people.
Mm-hmm.
They attack places. They do horrible things, right?
Mm.
They're doing it directed by the little beepy thing.
Yeah.
All that's doing, though, is giving them instructions.
Mm-hmm.
It is not hypnotizing them, it is not coercing them in any way. They still have free will, and they still choose to kill innocent people to save themselves.
That was the thing that confused me, and it was like, are they like, is this thing overriding their free will? Like, is it one of those things where like they're completely cognizant of what they're doing? Because obviously they are, because they tell Regan, "Why are you forcing us to kill?" But like, is this thing completely overriding their impulse control?
I don't think so because the doctor builds a better version of it that's a two-way communication thing. It's a simple communication tool. I think the doctor would have mentioned it if there was some sort of hypnotizing factor to it.
Yeah.
So it comes across like, oh, stop having us kill people. Well, just stop doing it then. And because you have Regan says, if you don't do what I tell you, I'll take the isotope away. So they know that what they're doing is wrong, and they're only doing it so he'll give them more radiation.
And so like that kind of raises the thing is that going, okay, without like no one knows like okay, on Earth
Mm,
at this point in time, no one bar the conspiracy knows anything really about them.
mm.
And they're relying solely on the conspiracy to keep them alive through radiation, right? But like, so if they break free, which they're I would say they're clearly capable of doing, are they then because of their very lethal nature? Are they kind of stuck between a rock and a hard? Like I was thinking, are they stuck between a rock and a hard place? Because if they try to approach them for help, they're going to more than likely end up killing them, and as by virtue of the fact, be targets themselves. But at the same
Yeah,
time,
but
that doesn't excuse the fact that it looks like they're voluntarily
yeah, but
killing people.
if you don't want to kill people, then don't kill people.
Hmm.
If you want to escape and try and make your way back to the space center on your own,
Hmm.
that's fine. You know, if someone comes towards you and touches you, you kill them. Oh shit. The next person who comes towards you, you just step back and step away from them and isolate yourself.
Hmm.
Do you know? They come across as either incredibly stupid or incredibly selfish.
Yeah.
Obviously, self preservation is a thing. No one wants to die. What would we do in their situation? We would never know. But in terms of feeling empathy for them, hmm, it makes it difficult.
Like you feel a small bit of empathy because they are clearly pawns. Like they arrived on Earth under like under false pretenses,
Mm.
and now they're pawns in the game.
Yeah.
And so you feel empathy from that for that perspective of things. But again, because there's no clear distinction that their impulse control is taken away from them,
Mm.
it's kind of like you know,
Yeah, and going to them having free will, when Liz goes into the room with them and one of them takes off his helmet,
yeah,
that's clearly him trying to get across to her,
yeah,
we're not human, we're from some. So clearly they do have free will because
yeah.
they chose to do that.
Oh no, but in the sense of like, does this communication device that Regan have like does that override?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't think so.
yeah,
Because, and this is just the fact of filmmaking in the 70s, they do actions beyond what you would get from a simple thing.
yeah. Push the button. Does multiple things.
Yeah, open the gate, step back off the road. Like, they're clearly not automatons,
No.
you know? And then we have the ambassadors in space,
Mm-hmm.
who I do actually like. Yeah, they keep the astronauts hypnotized, but they clearly try not to hurt them.
No.
They accept them onto their ship in good faith
Mm-hmm.
and sent their ambassadors in return in good faith. Um, Even when they find out that um, you know that their ambassadors are being ill treated and whatever, they don't take it out on the astronauts. Do you know? And you know, do they have to hypnotize them? Maybe they do. Maybe the guy's head's kind of lost it, and hypnotizing them is safest for the astronauts or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of taking away their agency, but maybe it was assessed that that was the best way to go about it. I have more sympathy for the ones in space than I did for the ones on the planet.
It depends. Your sympathy extends to like what football match are they watching? I got a real big sense of the Rills from Galaxy
Mm,
Four from them.
yeah.
Um, but I think that's like, and I have overall I have a soft spot for this story because the ambassadors themselves, like, it's great to see like an alien race encounter Earth that doesn't want to fucking destroy it.
Yeah.
That was there in the with the olive branch type thing.
Mm,
Um, so I liked that. That's one of the reasons why I like the overall part of the story, and where my empathy, I suppose, initially comes to the fact that the ambassadors were sent, they were kidnapped because they were betrayed, and now they're pawns in a game. But then, as I've said, it's kind of overridden by the fact of going like, Nancy Reagan, just say no.
yeah.
But how about we move on to the actual bastards of this piece?
Yeah, so you've listed three again. We have Taltalian, Carrington, and Regan.
Yeah,
Now, Tal- Tal-
tall
Tal-
Italian.
Taltalian would be
Yeah,
obviously the lowest
yeah.
ranking amongst those.
Mhm.
How would you do Carrington and Regan?
Personally, I think Regan is the more dangerous of the two.
Hmm,
But
interesting.
so, how about we do Tatalian first?
Okay.
and then we can do like I can give my impression of Regan, and then you can
Mm.
kind of see whether or not you want to give your discussion of Carrington or whatever the case may be. All right. So, what the hell are his motivations?
The only thing I can gather is that he got caught up in whatever Carrington's brain fuckery was. So whatever paranoia that took over Carrington in this whole scenario, he managed to convince Taltalion.
Yeah,
That's the only thing I can think of.
because is can Carrington tell him like that that this is something that needs to get done, or is there something else motivating him? Like, is there something higher? Because like that momentary pause he has before like trying to activate the suitcase bomb, kind of implies that he's not all in on this plan.
I get the feeling like I get the okay. This guy's not designed. He's not built for espionage, right? He's as subtle as a brick to the face.
Although to be fair, when he wears his like his paddy cap and his big glasses and like with his big bushy beard, it does look like a fake beard. So
So I think his thing was he believed Carrington and he wanted to support Carrington, but he never believed that he would have to be violent in any way.
hmm,
And he thought that all he'd have to do is sabotage machinery and build a little communication thing. And that was all he had to do.
yeah,
And I think the more he was brought into it, and that was largely by Regan, that wasn't by Carrington, the more he was brought into it, the more uncomfortable he became.
yeah,
But like he had no issue with drawing a gun on them, he had no issue with holding Liz with the gun. I mean, yeah, he says he never would have shot it, but he still drew it.
yeah.
Um, he knew exactly what was happening the whole time. He clearly bought into it enough that I think he brought into the general idea. He just didn't like to be the one to get his hands dirty.
There's also something very unsettling about when he encounters Liz on the road and he pulls the gun on her and he's like, "Get him, Miss Shaw," and it's like there's no reluctance,
No.
there's no sympathy. There's something very predatory about the way he says it. That's the way that I picked it up.
Yeah, it's him in control of a situation. And he knows, because he's drawn a gun on her already, this is the second time he's done it, that she'll do what he says. So even if he doesn't have to shoot her, that doesn't matter. He can still control her. Um, but yeah, the one thing I am surprised about, though,
Yeah.
is that Cornish allowed him back.
Hmm.
Even if Sir James vouched for him, I am surprised Cornish allowed him back in the building.
Like, is one of those things like where I've known Tatalian for so long, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
He drew a gun on people and he sabotaged the equipment. And you can tell, because Cornish kind of calls him on it later, Cornish is not happy with him. Then why is he there?
Maybe Quinlan forced him, or maybe Carrington forced him.
Maybe, but that's probably the, in terms of how Cornish runs the space center, that's the one thing that I was like, really? What the fuck? Like, you could have done the exact same story with Taltalian's second, who clearly is also in on it.
Yeah.
There's no reason to actually bring Taltalian back because no one suspected his second was in on it. So it would have been better if Taltalian went away and his second continued with the sabotage.
Yeah. No, you could have done it with the mysterious technician person.
Yeah.
So, Regan and Carrington.
Yeah.
Now, I consider Regan to be the more dangerous of the two because he has his own personal goals outside of Carrington's mission.
Mm.
He's also more ruthless in that he doesn't seem to worry about killing people himself outside of the agenda, like by the fact that he kicks the space center technician off the parapet of the fueling station. Like that's like at least a 25-foot drop onto hard concrete. Whereas like Carrington's orders from the start were avoid casualties if possible.
Mm.
It's like whereas with Regan, it's like, oh well, everyone is acceptable to die type thing.
Yeah, I think for me with Regan is certainly a more dangerous individual, but Carrington's actions have the bigger, more dangerous implication. One is aiming for war. One wants to rob a bank.
Yeah,
A
Like,
little bit of difference.
well, like, okay, so no, there, no, in terms of the scale, yes, but and like, which is strange because normally I'm always kind of saying the one that always say like we have a moral duty to do this. I'm like, fucking cuckoo. I don't, but there's just something about Regan. It's just that he's so nonchalant in the way that he treats the deaths that he has caused
Yeah.
outside of the agenda. And like, okay, like obviously with the two, his two men that he willingly sacrificed. Look, it's it's a cold, calculating mob boss type move.
Also,
But
they may not have been his men.
yeah, they
They
could
were
have
the
been.
men he was in charge of, but
Yeah,
like he may not have even fucking known them.
I know, but there's just something about Regan that is just like, no,
I think in terms of a one-to-one interaction, Regan is the one you don't want to be locked in a room with.
yeah, yeah. That's the best way of putting it. I
In
think.
terms of the villain of the story, though,
Hmm.
I would pin that on Carrington. He is the
Yeah.
mastermind.
Mhm.
He is the one undermining unit. He is the one who arrests the brigadier. He arrests all of the unit soldiers. He's going to go on a worldwide telecast.
Hmm.
He is much more dangerous in the big picture, but Regan is someone you don't want to be locked alone in a room with
Yeah.
because he will kill you
Hmm.
to give him more oxygen.
I actually, yeah, definitely. I actually wonder how, like, take the doctor out of the scenario. Okay,
Mm.
how would Regan's actions have impacted Carrington's plans? Like, could he potentially have just decided to snuff Carrington out because Carrington was annoying the shit out of him?
I think so. I think he was perfectly happy to let Carrington do his own thing. Like Carrington could do his telecast. Carrington would be caught up in the whole missiles into space thing. And while he's doing that, Regan will potter around doing his own thing. And if Carrington wants to go after him, then Regan has, hey buddy, like I'll tell people what the hell you did.
Yeah.
So whatever. I think Regan, like I said, I think he's very skilled. He clearly has no qualms about what he's doing and who he's doing it to,
Hmm.
and those two things make him incredibly dangerous. Like the fact that he, like, if you think about all the things he did, how quickly he was able to do them, how like dedicated on his mission he was. Like at the end, you kind of get the sense that he's just a thief. He's just a very skilled individual.
Hmm.
But I'm really wondering, where did he get these skills from? Like he knew that space control center
Hmm.
really well.
Well, like any good thief, know your mission, know your lay of your land type thing.
But yeah, but he also knew which pipes to use to fuck shit up.
Yeah, true.
Do you know? Now a lot of that could have been Carrington's brief. Maybe Carrington had him infiltrating the facility ages back.
Hmm.
We don't know. Um, but yeah, the one thing that I do find interesting about this character is that he's clearly out for himself. The fact that
Hmm.
he doesn't kill the doctor
Yeah.
because he thinks the doctor could be of benefit to him. The fact that he's planning on using the ambassadors to rob banks and things. But also the fact that he offers the solution at the end.
Yeah.
He is caught. He's fucked. But when they're like, how are we going into the base? And he's like, well, you could use them.
Yeah. That's like the whole clemency, my lord.
Yeah, like, don't forget who gave you the idea.
Yeah.
Do you know? He is a very skilled, small time bad guy.
Hmm.
He wants to do his shit to get what he wants. The world, he doesn't give a shit. He's out for him
Yeah.
and for his comfort and for his immediacy, whatever. Does he want to take over the world? No.
No.
He wants to rob a bank and live the high life.
All I want is the world and everything in it,
Yeah.
except the world. I'll just take everything in it.
And then you've got the contrast then in Carrington, who is a fucking Fruit Loop. And not only that, he is a dangerous Fruit Loop.
But what's one thing I find very interesting, right,
Hmm.
is that he views it as a moral duty,
Hmm.
as opposed to any sort of like xenophobic stance. Like he never once.
I
No, you can't.
people hide behind the word moral duty when they actually mean xenophobic shit. So,
Like, see, and this is where, like, in my eyes, there's a small bit of a distinction in Carrington's case because So obviously, like there's like you're right that do some people do hide the xenophobia behind the words moral duty, but like, in my head, most times that's the case. They use derogatory language towards the people that they're actively trying to go up against, or they're trying to make the enemy. Whereas here, Carrington doesn't really do that. He just basically states that they are the enemy and they need to be destroyed.
I disagree with you on that generalization, and the reason why is there are plenty of people in this world who believe that out of love, it is their moral duty to send their child to a homosexual conversion clinic,
Oh yeah, okay, yeah,
and that is
no,
their moral duty, and they're doing it out of love. And they don't use derogatory terms for them. They are doing it because they love this person, and this person is ill.
hmm.
Um, or they're doing it because they love this person. What this person is doing or saying goes against something, God, social norms, whatever, and it's their moral duty to help them out of love. So the fact that he doesn't call the aliens any derogatory terms, or the fact that he's sort of relatively calm and cool about the whole thing, I wouldn't say that that's any indication that he's not a xenophobe. Um, Moral high ground is regularly a hiding place for many forms of discriminatory phobias.
Like because no, I'm not disputing any of that. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not. Well, it's just with this one, it just seems kind of strange because the instigation point from his point of view, from his that we know of from his retelling, is the death of his fellow astronaut
Mm,
on his mission, where they didn't realize that they're lethal to touch, and
yeah.
your man died. And obviously, because they have no way of communicating between the two of them, his no, the way that he doesn't really kind of speak in terms of like he was my best friend. He doesn't speak in terms of like maybe he was more than just a friend. Like there's nothing exactly. It's just that they killed him,
Mm,
and like so that's where for me it's like I can't see. And again, like as you said, like a lot of people do disguise it behind terms like moral duty, but I can't see like I can't see the xenophobic point of view, or I can't. It's just a strange one. It's just like, what is it about the death of your one colleague that has made you want to wage war on an entire race?
mm. Well, I think what makes him dangerous, though, is the fact that when he came back, he set up this whole thing.
Yeah.
He got himself into this position of power. He's in charge of space security.
Hmm.
Like, he got himself in this position of power. He had no qualms whatsoever about running the Brigadier ragged.
Hmm.
But it's also clear, and this is where his I did it for the moral good, I think, doesn't stand up. He knew he was going behind people's backs, and he knew that doing that was wrong. If he was so steadfast in his conviction that it was actually the correct course of action,
He would have made it an actual.
make it a public thing
Yeah, make it a public speaking point. Yeah.
as opposed to hiding it, as opposed to lying about his involvement, as opposed to playing into the idea that, oh, these are the astronauts returned home. All of the lies he tells shows that his moral high ground is a load of bullshit.
Like I honestly didn't factor that thing in. And because
Mm.
like sometimes like my brain kind of goes like starts thinking about stuff outside of what we're presented, or then other times it doesn't take in stuff that we're presented. And it's like, yeah, like why all this cloak and dagger stuff if it's such a matter of national security or like worldwide security?
Yeah. And the fact that he was trying to pawn it off as
Foreign.
foreign
No,
involvement,
that
like,
could be the xenophobia play. All right, it's just that blaming it on Britain's enemies.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. I rescind my statement. Yeah. No. I rescind my statement. I actually, because see the whole that everyone just keeps shooting him down when he says, "Oh, it's a foreign power," and it's like because there's two clues: newspaper clippings and a comb that
Yeah,
has.
basically, he's really shit at
Yeah.
espionage.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I rescind my statement. But he is like a fucking wackadoodle. Like,
Yeah, completely. Completely. So we have gone through our story recap. Thank you again, Paddington. We have talked about our trivia, and we have
Thank
talked
you.
about. You're welcome. And we have talked about our characters. Now we're on to our overall score. So, Paddington, I will hand it to you. Overall thoughts and score out of 5, please.
um, so we have a slight kind of a reverse image of the story from last week,
Hmm.
in the sense of we have more divided opinion from the humans about the alien threat, especially like the Brigadier and Cornish. You
Hmm.
know, it was great to see that aspect of stuff. And like, I think watching Silurians and Ambassadors of Death back to back, they're nice companion pieces.
Hmm.
Now back to back, it's 14 episodes, like, you know, so like maybe over 2 days, but you know, they're nice companion pieces in terms of everyone's character growth and the world, you know, at the time, the worldview at the time. Great performance from the three main, the
Hmm.
majority of our supporting cast, and as well as always a shout out to Benton, whom I love because I am Benton. I really enjoyed the ending because of that, just that understanding, like not agreement and not empathy or sympathy, but the understanding of Carrington's point of view by the Doctor.
Hmm.
It's like, you know, when you watch Infinity War for the first time, like, you know, Thanos is like, you know, well, I see where he's coming from. I don't agree with it, but I can see where he's coming from. I understand his motivations, but they're wrong.
That is genocide.
Yeah, that is genocide, my friend. Fucking brilliant.
Captain Genocide over here, like.
Yeah. um,
Yes, we have been watching What If.
yes, because we're nerds.
Yep.
Liz, yes, she does have, like, her role is a bit reduced compared to last week,
Hmm.
but she has lots of cool moments. She stands her own really well, and it's just solid. A great performance from Caroline John, just solid throughout. And you know, the Brig, Jesus Christ, like, what a story for him. He's fantastic the whole way throughout. Now, is it as good as last week? No.
Hmm.
It's still good. I still enjoy it, but it's not up to the same caliber as the two preceding stories. And that's kind of done with the fact of, you know, as you pointed out, the lack of concern from Liz, from her, you know, her two besties. Then, and like also the kind of the lack of clear distinction as to why the ambassadors can't, you know, Nancy Reagan just say no. So I've put it as a 4 because I still enjoy the overall concept of the story. I enjoy the pace of the story and you know, the main performances. So yeah, like I and just, you know, for that I was giving it a 4.
Cool.
And now it's time for you to give it a 1 because they did Liz wrong.
Yeah, so I mentioned to you earlier today, I struggled with my score on this one. There are plenty of moments in this story that I absolutely loved, but there was also a lot I was not a fan of.
Let's end it on a high. What
Okay,
didn't you
what
like?
didn't I like?
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody searches for Liz. Like, what the fuck? They just continue on as normal with the regular police being the ones looking for her. Like, that makes no fucking sense. And we always talk about, like, or we've talked a lot about, like, oh, what's the best team TARDIS? And I said I was really looking forward after last week's story and the story before, this trio coming together, because they're much more equals than we've seen up to now.
Yeah, definitely.
This was not a story of a trio. This was 3 individual fucking people, 2 of whom works together a bit, and then another 2 who work together a bit. This wasn't a trio. And Liz wasn't around either of them long enough to really be seen as having paired up with them. Do you know?
That it has all been in vain. The fellowship is broken.
Yeah. Which sucks because those 3 work so well together.
Mm.
We didn't. I was missing more of Liz and the Brig because their banter is always so great to watch, and I was missing the concern. Like if we think back to the Silurians last week, I commented that one of the things I really liked was when Liz got knocked out and the doctor was just stroking her hair.
Yeah.
I was like, where did he go? Like, where's this caring person? Where's the Brig who cares about all of the people reporting to him? Do you know, that bothered me. So that was a big, that, I'll be honest, that was a big issue for me because it pissed me off
Mm.
watching the story. The supporting cast, I don't think was as strong as we've seen in other stories. I think we had one or two people who were very good, and the rest of them were kind of meh. I think Carrington. I don't think the portrayal was great. A couple of others were a bit hit or miss. I hated the news anchor piece at the beginning. Like, why is this guy there? It slowed down the story so much to have him telling you what's happening. We can see what's happening, dude. You don't need to tell us.
I think it was just exposition.
Yeah, and like we see it in the modern show where you've got like the news reports and stuff like that.
Mm.
But news reports of the 70s were very different and were a lot more static and non emotive and fucking boring. And in my mind, I think the story was too long.
Mm.
It dragged where it didn't need to and could easily have been covered in a six-parter. Now, I know there's back-end reasons as to why it had to be a seven, but if it was going to be a seven, I think there's plenty of other things they could have done with that extra time. Like I said, the search for Liz could have been much more fleshed out.
Mm.
I think the Brigadier could have had much better. Like the Brigadier never even saw Lennox. He was just locked in a room.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't have been better if the Brigadier had been to see him, had gotten his story, then Lennox had been killed, so the Brigadier had no proof.
Mm.
Do you know? Like, things like that, I think, could have been done a lot better. Things I loved, though, I liked the Doctor for the most part, bar the thing I've already mentioned. I liked him for the most part. I loved Liz because I just love Liz in general, but I particularly liked her in this story. She didn't let herself be the damsel in distress. She freed herself once. She was constantly trying to get herself out of the situation. And even when she was stuck in the situation, it wasn't woe is me. There was no losing the will to live. I don't think Liz even knows what that term means. She's just getting on with her life, which is great. I liked the concept of the story.
She clearly doesn't have a degree in poetry.
The other thing about Liz, I forgot to mention, like Lennox recognizes her.
Yeah.
And again, we're getting to see Liz's. Now he still refers to her as Miss Shaw, but he's seen her present and stuff like that, which is great. I really liked the concept of the story. I think it was a really interesting concept. I don't know about you. I really liked the music.
Yeah, the action sequences music was brilliant.
The action secret music, and I actually quite liked the music they play, the sort of very airy music they play whenever the ambassadors are doing something. Because it adds that otherworldliness to it, and it actually sort of, the use of music in this story, because it was music and not just sound effect, I think it brought the storytelling up a notch.
Yeah, it wasn't just some guy sitting on a piano.
Yeah, it was musical pieces that were very, very good. But for me, the standout above all others is the Brick.
Yeah.
This is his story. Like, no matter what score I give it, this is currently, it's on my list of best Brick stories in terms of his brigginess.
Briggy Briggness. Also, because you called them like a trilogy like a trio, based on like this era of Doctor Who, I want to see like the Charlie's Angels silhouette of the tree, like with the Doctor doing the hands and the Brig with the gun and Liz with the walkie-talkie.
But see, now I sort of have it. Like, I was trying to think of an appropriate trio for them, and I was like, oh no, I have found the perfect one. They're Han, Luke, and Leia. Except imagine Luke is more knowledgeable than he is in the movies, because Han has Chewie and the Brig has Benton.
Yeah.
And then you have Leia, and obviously Leia and Han are destined to be together, and they're always at each other's throats. And so are Liz and the Brig. So,
and given next week, that's actually a really good, description for Benton.
Yeah, and science sibs,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I loved the Brigadier in this. I thought he was fantastic. Again, small loss for not doing more for Liz, but overall, just phenomenal story. I struggled with the score.
Mm. You do like?
I didn't think it was average.
No.
An average would be 3.
Mm-hmm.
I thought 3.5 was still low, but given the things I didn't like about it, particularly the length and the fact that, if I'm honest, some bits were boring, I couldn't give it a 4.
Okay.
I want to give it a 4 for the Brig and Liz, but if I want good Brig and Liz, I'll probably watch the first 2 stories of this season.
Yeah.
So for me, I ended up on a 3.75. I couldn't bring myself. I was giving, like, originally I wrote down, oh, I'll give it a 4 because it's quite good. And I'm like, well, how does it compare to the other 4 stories, like 4.0 stories that we've had? And I was like, I don't think it matches up. So yeah, based on the things that I said, nobody searching for Liz is a big thing, but also I thought it was too long. They could have done more to keep the pacing going well. I think they failed on that. However, it is a very well shot story. The music is very good. The acting from a lot of people is very good. The Brig is fantastic, and Liz is fantastic. So, yeah, for me it was 3.75.
Cool. I felt that way about certain stories as well. Like, you want to give, like, you feel like you should give it a high score, but at the same time, there's stuff there that's just like, no, sorry, I can't bring myself to do it, type thing,
Yeah.
And then there's stuff like there's, now I remember when we discussed the massacre, like the concept of the historical setting of the massacre. I loved. I thought it was great. For a historical period drama, I was hooked into it. But for a Doctor Who story, I was really taken out of it because the Doctor was missing, and I had to rely on Stephen to bump his way through fucking 4 episodes.
Yeah. Like, if you think about it this way, like, I gave The Chase a 3. I know the story I thought went a bit long.
Yeah.
Is this better than The Chase? Yeah, I think it is. I gave The Keys of Marinus a 4. Is it as good as The Keys of Marinus? As an entity, I don't think Keys of Marinus flowed better.
Well, because we talked about Keys of Marinus, is that it was like a load of little mini adventures into one big one.
Yeah. So that flowed nicer, But yeah, I think overall, though, I mean, this season so far, we're 3 stories in. We're both currently on 4.5. So
I have a feeling that this will probably be the best rated season.
Well, we'll have to see next week, because with 3 stories down, we've 1 more to go. Then this season is over, which makes it seem like this season is really short. It's not in terms of the number of episodes, just in terms of the number of stories. It's incredibly short. So join us next week for the final story of season 7, which is Inferno.
Ooh.
Bye.
Bye.